Before we get started, I want to talk about the name of this book for a second because I don't even know how it's pronounced. When I was a little kid and I saw this book at a book fair, for some stupid reason I called it The Curse of Batterslea Hall. And then I went home, got money from my parents, and the next day I bought it and realized that's not what it was called. It was called The Curse of Batterslea Hall, which I assume that's how it's pronounced, but because it's meant to take place in Britain, I have a feeling British people wouldn't pronounce it that way. Perhaps it's actually
Batterslea Hall.
I don't know, but since I'm technically not British and I'm an American, we're just gonna call this The Curse of Batterslea Hall. One day you get a letter from England. It's from a distant cousin of yours, a girl named Amanda Fielding. Amanda is the same age as you. She's interested in knowing what life is like in America, and you start a regular correspondence with her. Your mother and father don't know much about that particular branch of the family, except that they're supposed to be quite wealthy. But through Amanda's letters, you learn that she's an orphan, her parents having disappeared under mysterious circumstances when she was a baby. Choose your own adventure strikes again. She's being raised by her grandmother. You get the feeling that she is lonely, so when you get an invitation to visit her at Batterslea Hall in Devon, England, you're eager to go. Included with the invitation is a plane ticket to London. There's also a train ticket from London to Witherford, the closest town to Batterslea Hall. And since summer vacation is coming up and Amanda's family seems prepared to pay for your trip, your parents agree to let you go. And before you know it, you're off. So you fly to go meet your cousin. You arrive in London and then take a train to the town nearest the residence, which is Witherford, a town in the heart of the English moorlands. I don't even know if that's a real place. Devon, England is real. Witherford, I don't know. And there you meet a man named Mr. Horace Atwood. He claims to be an agent for the National Trust and that he's also going to the same place as you because he hopes to persuade the owners of the hall to open it up to the public as a historical landmark. He then tells you why the hall is so important. It was a major Cavalier stronghold. He gives you some history about a civil war between the Cavaliers who were loyal to King Charles I and the rebellious Puritans led by Oliver Cromwell. A large number of Cavaliers were killed in a surprise attack on the hall in 1642, and to this day the locals say that there is a curse on the place. You're approached by a small, bent, gnome-like man who introduces himself as Blope. Sounds like less of a name and more like a sound of indigestion, but whatever. He says he's your driver, so you and Mr. Atwood hurry after him in the fog and rain. There's been a massive downpour as of late, for 3 days now. As you begin your drive to Batterslea Hall, you are stopped by the police who warn you against it due to the weather and also mention that there are 2 escaped convicts about, and there's flooding up ahead, so now you have a choice to make. You can keep pressing on and take your chances, or you can head back to Witherford for the night and try again in the morning. The basic storyline of this book is one of a curse on Batterslea Hall by the Puritans long ago. The hall is currently occupied by 2 witches, Lady Darkness and someone claiming to be Amanda's grandmother. The witches have imprisoned Amanda and have Blope under their control as well, so essentially your goal in this story is to rescue your cousin. Many choices in this book actually lead to dead ends pretty quickly. The book typically presents choices with one continuing on and the other leading to an end rather than branching yet again. There are obviously many forks in the story, but it seems that in general the reader is sort of ushered down a main path most of the time. That's a little bit of a disappointment, but whatever. The book, however, is also very consistent with its narrative, so everything that you learn in one branch still applies to the other branches as well. So rereading and backtracking will actually fill out the story as a whole rather than lead to completely different storylines or characters switching their motives. In this sense, the book is best served by making sure to read the whole thing rather than just reading until an ending or two. The various branches in this book will have you dealing with the escaped convicts, some gypsies, time travel back to the period of the Cavaliers and Puritans. Of course, it's a choose-your-own-adventure book. Visiting an English pub in Witherford where you're warned against going to the hall, trying to escape from the hall after getting trapped inside, and trying to make sure Lady Darkness doesn't kill you in the process. Once you're in the hall, you might find yourself trapped in a bedroom and finding a mysterious note, at which point you begin looking for a secret passage out via the fireplace. Because why not? Everyone knows the fireplace is where the secret passage is if there's no bookcase. Scooby-Doo has taught us well. Blope and this other woman, who is supposedly Amanda's grandmother, work for Lady Darkness, who is supposedly Amanda's great-great-grandmother, who steals the life force from people so she can continue living. She was the mistress of Batterslea Hall when it was attacked in 1642 and is still alive now by killing and devouring the essence of people who visit. They are preparing Amanda to take their places and helping Lady Darkness someday when these two are gone. Amanda, however, is in a wheelchair, except she actually can walk, but she doesn't know it. Another Lady Darkness trick.
So devious.
Also, Amanda has a huge hound dog named Baskerville. He's a good boy. Follow his instincts. He knows things. Some of the endings you might find in this book are you and Mr. Atwood being hit with a beam of light from a tower in the hall and then having your eyes pop out of your head and your brains turn to jelly, and then you become zombies and shamble towards the hall never to be seen again. Being stuck in the 17th century. Being stuck in a dream. forever. Getting trapped in a tunnel and running out of oxygen. You and Amanda wandering out into the moors, never to be seen again. Being stabbed to death by the escaped convicts. Batterslea Hall catches on fire and crumbles to the ground with Lady Darkness flying across the sky. Making a run for the exit and falling through a trap door. And ending completely out of nowhere. Getting shot by one of the convicts and going home. Being strangled to death in a dungeon. Sinking into the moors and drowning. There are surprisingly a lot of violent endings in this book. And it was made for kids. All in all, this is an entertaining book, but I feel like the branches could have been more diverse instead of most of the time being roped back onto the main path via instant endings. Also, the story was interesting enough that when you realize you've read the whole book, you actually feel like there should have been more. That this is a story that just should have been longer and more fleshed out. Another victim of the 118 to 120 page choose your own adventure format. You find yourself wishing the castle itself really could have been used much more in the story because it is a very interesting setting, and so much more adventure could have been had if the book would have just been longer or maybe just done a little better with less random endings. It was a fun read through though, and I suppose wishing the story went on more can really only be considered a positive. The artwork is by Ted Enoch, one of the top illustrators in this series, and his work on this story is top notch as usual. Very detailed and descriptive of the actions written on the page. This guy's work is always wonderful to see with its detailed and whimsical sort of flair. This is the first Richard Brightfield entry in this video series, and in fact the first choose your own adventure book I ever read was a Brightfield book, The Dragon's Den. So instead of Edward Packard or R.A. Montgomery, it was actually this guy that brought me into reading these kinds of books when I was a kid. The Curse of Batterslea Hall was the second choose your own adventure book I had ever read. I liked it back then, and I'd say it's still a pretty good one now too. Is it one of the classics of the series? Well, maybe not, but the setting and the story ideas still make it a good read, and it's a worthy addition to the series. Until next time.